Okay, yeah, I don't know what happened. Okay, we're back. Sorry, we're back on. So we're trying, y'all. It has been a whole week, and I mentioned, and I think I jinxed myself by mentioning last week about how God tests you on things that you are getting ready to teach, and I cannot promise you that I have passed this week at all. But I've been able to sort of like numb out and just kind of roll with it and just sort of ride the waves of a really crazy week. So, anyway,
B minus.
thanks. Thanks. So, we're in Ecclesiastes 7 and 8. Tonight, Solomon is talking about death, and he's going to start out by talking about your name, basically your reputation. About out as at the time of your death, it is the seal of your reputation is kind of sealed forever at that point. We start out with a verse from Proverbs 10:7. The memory of the righteous is blessed, but the name of the wicked will rot. Verse 1. A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of one's birth. So it's an interesting way to look at it, where he's saying the day of your death is better than the day of your birth. Now we know that for believers, what he is basically saying is the day of birth is the beginning of troubles, is the beginning of work and toil and trouble and all of the things that you spend your life working out. But the day of your death is when you enter into rest and peace and heaven if you're a believer. So that's basically what he's saying. So I put in here Psalm 116:15. This verse says, "Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints." We have had, Madison was saying this morning, enough funerals and we've got one more this week. It's just been waves of funerals here recently. But I like this verse because it really describes how the Lord watches so closely, and it's sweet. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. So I put this picture in here. It's the best one I could kind of come up with as far as going and being with the Lord, and the peace and the joy and the finally being able to put all of this behind us, all of the troubles, all of the debts, all of the blown up bathrooms and sewage in your bathtub and all the stuff. MLGW. Oh, yeah. You hadn't heard my whole week.
Blown up.
It's still going on. I'll tell you later. He did not. So this is the comment. Solomon also points out in other places that laughter can be like medicine, but sorrow can be like nourishing food that strengthens the inner person. That both are important in their time. That sorrow, there is a place for sorrow that is maturing and the processing of life's troubles. All right, we got more to go through, so I'm just keep going. Verse 2, better to go to the house of mourning than go to the house of feasting. For that is the end of all men, and the living will take it to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by a sad countenance the heart is made better. Basically meaning the heart is made mature. Yeah, well, that's basically what it means. The comment. The focus here is on personal growth and maturity. We are admonished to look death in the eye and learn from it. Verse 4, the heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. It's better to hear the rebuke of the wise than for a man to hear the song of fools. For like the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of the fool. This also is vanity. I think that's kind of self-explanatory. Here's the comment. Good leaders will take flattery with a grain of salt, but listen carefully to criticism. Flattery is a wicked tool, really. Um, not it's not. I don't mean exhortation. I don't mean truly exhorting someone, but flattery. Flattery is manipulation. It's just like blowing smoke up somebody's butt. So take it with a grain of salt, but listen carefully to criticism. The criticism of a friend, um, you know, weigh it carefully. Verse 7, surely oppression destroys a wise man's reason, and a bribe debases the heart. So this is falling prey to manipulative tactics. A bribe debases the heart. Bribery is, there's the phrase, everyone has a price. And for the most part, it's true. It's really kind of rare to find someone who has enough backbone and character to actually hold a firm line on something, on a moral boundary. Most people, they can be bought. It just depends on what the price is, But the Lord sees all of that stuff. Okay, 8. The end of a thing is better than its beginning. The patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. So these are all like interesting things to ponder. The end of a thing is better than its beginning. And that's kind of like once something, you shut the door on something and seal it, it's a sealing. It's a like, okay, this work is complete. This thing is done. And you put it over here. You kind of put it to the side. That's kind of how I, interpret that. So that work is done. So here's a comment. The beginning of sin leads to death, but if God is at the beginning of a thing, he will see that we reach the end successfully. And example is how Joseph started out a slave but ended as a ruler. Jesus saves the best wine for the last. So so those are some examples of how, if the Lord is in something, if we commit our works to the Lord and he's in it, then the end of that matter is going to be a maturity, a completion, a good thing. But a lot of times the beginning is hard. The beginning is struggle. Verse 9, do not hasten in your spirit to be angry, for anger rests in the bosoms of fools. Do not say, why were the former days better than these? For you do not inquire wisely concerning this. So, okay, here's the comment. The good old days is often a combination of bad memory and good imagination. And that's really true. It's kind of like how the Hebrews, when they during the Exodus, when they left Egypt, because of the troubles they encountered in the wilderness, they often were like, what, we had it better back there in Egypt, when that wasn't really true. It's just that there were certain things that they had in Egypt that it was just coloring their perception at the moment. The slavery really wasn't better than being fed manna from heaven. It was just that the things that were inconvenient and uncomfortable at the time, they, were inflated in their minds at the time. And here's another example of that. When the foundation was laid for the second temple. Okay, Solomon built the first temple, and then the first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians when they went to captivity into Babylonia. So when they came back from Babylonian captivity, they began to build the second temple. When the foundation was laid for the second temple, the old men wept for the good old days, but the young men sang because the work had begun. Ezra 3:12 says, but many of the priests and Levites and heads of the fathers' houses, old men who had seen the first temple, wept with a loud voice when the foundation of this temple was laid before their eyes. Yet many shouted aloud for joy. so that the people could not discern the noise of the shout of joy from the noise of the weeping of the people. For the people shouted with a loud shout, but the sound was heard afar off. So that's just such a that's such an interesting tension between the two things happening at the same time. The old men who remembered the glory of the former temple is what it expands in Ezra. They remembered what the glory of the former temple was.
I read that book this week.
Did you really?
Yeah. I don't know why.
Huh. And then the young men who did not remember the former, they were shouting for joy because the work had begun on the second. And both were, I think both things are equally valid and important and weighty for that moment. I don't think either one was
I
wrong.
wonder how hard it was for them, because then like their work got put to a halt
Man.
right after that for like
Yes.
a long time.
Yes.
It was like, can't do that.
Yes.
It's like they started it. There's this huge like.
Yeah, the people around them. That's a really good study because the people around them, and there's one guy named Sanballat and somebody else, but they tormented them because they didn't want to see them. They didn't want to see them succeed to rebuild the walls and the temple and all that. And eventually, they went back and forth, and with them and Sanballat and those guys, and they eventually had the king actually dig up the decree of Cyrus, who had made the decree. And so in the end, it ended up better for them. In the end, it ended up that that when the king that followed Cyrus said, "Oh
they
no,"
paid for everything.
yeah, it says
Found out that it was supposed
they
to be paid for.
found out. Yeah, they said, not only are you going to let them do it,
You're gonna pay for it.
you're going to pay for it. And we're going to give them all of these things in order to do it. So in the end of it, but it was a struggle to get there. And it happened, it was for years. And they were constantly tormented and intimidated and bullied and antagonized. And so it ended up, so that's those kind of things, and they're persistent throughout Scripture, that kind of setup for a good story. So when you have a really bad week, like I have had this week, really have, and it really is true. I've tried to, in the back of my mind, remember that maybe there's a reason. Maybe God has a grand plan for all. You just don't know. You just don't know why you're kind of displaced from your house for a while, or MLGW is being the mafia, or you just don't know, like. So you try to hold it in perspective, and one way or another, the Lord can use these things, whether or not He set it up that way for a purpose or not. All right, verse 11. Wisdom is good with an inheritance and profitable to those who see the sun. For wisdom is a defense, as money is a defense. But the excellence of knowledge is that wisdom gives life to those who have it. So it's basically saying, that wisdom is better than money, because money comes and goes. Wisdom is lasting. So there's the comment: money loses its value, but wisdom keeps its value and cannot be lost. Verse 13: consider the work of God, for who can make straight what He has made crooked? In the day of prosperity, be joyful. But in the day of adversity, consider, surely God has appointed the one as well as the other, so that man can find out nothing that will come after him. So we really, really went deep in that thought process when we were going through Job.
Like, you're not gonna figure out the formula.
No, you're not. Yeah, exactly. You're not going to figure out the formula, and it's for a reason.
Never mind.
What?
Sorry.
I thought you looked like you had an epiphany, and then I was like, what?
Oh, give me the formula.
Oh. No, it's okay.
I tried to walk past it, and it was too much silence.
Verse 15. I have seen everything in my days of vanity. There is a just man who perishes in his righteousness, and there is a wicked man who prolongs life in his wickedness. This is the comment, a pervasive question of life. Why do the righteous suffer and the wicked seem to prosper? And this really dovetails on everything we were just talking about before we turned the camera on, right? The wicked appear to prosper only if you take the short view of things. They appear to prosper right now. But it's only if you look short term that plays out. That it's the wicked get everything, and they bulldoze over the righteous. And if you try to do things, play by the rules and do things the right way, you're going to get taken advantage of, etc. But they only appear to prosper in the short term of things. So I put in here Psalm 73. I really love this psalm. And this is David. That question, by the way, is so often repeated by the prophets, all the way through Scripture. That is the question all the way through. Why? Why, God? Why? This is not anything new. We all think that it's new to us or that it's unique to us, but it has always been the question of why do they seem to get away with everything, and they get, and that the people who are trying to do right get, the short end of the stick. Well, it seems that way if you are only taking a shallow look. So Psalm 73, this is David who wrote this. You have destroyed all those who desert you for harlotry. But it is good for me to draw near to God. I've put my trust in the Lord God, that I might declare all your works. Truly, God is good to Israel, to such as are pure in heart. But as for me, y'all listen, because this has been me. I told you I shouldn't have even said, I jinxed myself saying that God tests you in the things that you teach. But as for me, my feet had almost stumbled. My steps had nearly slipped. For I
almost used this in my sermon today and I didn't. I seriously almost did.
That's so crazy. For I was envious of the boastful when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. For there are no pangs in their death, but their strength is firm. They're not in trouble as other men, nor are they plagued like other men. Therefore, pride serves as their necklace, and violence covers them like a garment. Their eyes bulge with abundance, and they have more than the heart could wish. They scoff and speak wickedly concerning oppression, and they speak loftily. They set their mouth against the heavens, and their tongues walk through the earth. Therefore, his people return here, and the waters of a full cup are drained by them. And they say, how does God know? And is there knowledge in the Most High? Behold, these are the ungodly who are always at ease. They increase in riches. Surely I have cleansed my heart in vain and washed my hands in innocence. For all day long I have been plagued and chastened every morning. If I had said, I will speak thus, behold, I would have been untrue to the generation of your children. When I thought how to understand this, it was too painful for me until I went to the sanctuary of God, and then I understood their end. Surely you set them in slippery places. You cast them down to destruction. Oh, how they are brought to desolation as in a moment. They are utterly consumed with terrors. As a dream when one awakes, so, Lord, when you awake, you shall despise their image. Thus my heart was grieved and was vexed in my mind. I was so foolish and ignorant. I was like a beast before you. Nevertheless, I am continually with you, and you hold me by my right hand. You will guide me with your counsel, and afterward receive me to glory. Whom have I in heaven but you? And there is none upon earth that I desire besides you. My flesh and my heart fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. For indeed, those who are far from you shall perish. So that whole psalm, I wanted to put that whole thing in there because it's such a picture of, I was so foolish and arrogant. I almost sinned because I found myself being jealous. I found myself being envious of the wicked because they have it easy. But then when I went to the sanctuary of God and I realized that their fate is sealed, is basically what he was saying. Their fate is sealed. The thing that awaits them, is the destruction that awaits them is awful. And for those of us who believe, he will walk with us in our troubles and then walk us into glory. And so if we can see it that way, then we need to see it that way so we can keep our own heart in line. All right, verse 16. Do not be overly righteous, nor be overly wise. Why should you destroy yourself? Now that right there, what it's actually meaning, it's the verb. Okay, this is the comment. The Hebrew verb carries the idea of a reflexive action, meaning don't claim to be righteous and don't claim to be wise. It's a warning against self-righteousness and the pride that comes when we think we have spiritually arrived. He makes it clear that later on that there are no righteous people. So that's basically it's just a kind of a clumsy-ish English translation. 18. It is good that you grasp this. 17, sorry. Do not be overly wicked, nor be foolish. Why should you die before your time? It is good that you grasp this, and also not remove your hand from the other, for he who fears God will escape them all. Wisdom strengthens the wise more than 10 rulers of the city, for there is not a just man on earth who does good and does not sin. Also, do not take to heart everything people say, lest you hear your servant cursing you. For many times also your own heart has known that even you have cursed others. Don't be easily offended is basically what he's saying. Don't take everything so personally. Try not to take everything somebody says to heart. But the comment here is about gossip. Gossip has caused more pain and suffering than many other sins. It's a form of betrayal, and gossip really is a form of betrayal. This is not the same thing, and we know, and everyone should know, that this is not the same thing as accountability, truth telling. There are times when things need to be said. That's not the same thing. If people need to be accountable for wrongdoing, basically. But we all know what gossip is. This is not the same thing. But Proverbs 6:18 says, 6:16 says, these 6 things the Lord hates. Yes, 7 are an abomination to him. A proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans. Man, I have known some people like this that just constantly come up with wicked plans. Feet that are swift in running to evil, a false witness who speaks lies, and one who sows discord among brethren. And those of us who've been in churches for long enough have seen that play out before, is a person that goes between people, and it doesn't always have to be so overt as gossip. It can be really subtle. It can be like so subtle as like, I don't know about that person. Or it's like, are you okay? Or like, it can be something that just all it does is plant a little seed of doubt, of like it make you look at that person differently. And the people that have spend their life, learning how to manipulate, that they're really good at those really subtle things, that just make people look at each other with suspicion. And then they can leverage that and use that to sow discord among brethren. All right, verse 23. All this I have proved by wisdom. I said, I will be wise, but it was far from me. As for that which is far off and exceedingly deep, who can find it out? I applied my heart to know, to search and seek out wisdom and the reason of things, to know the wickedness of folly, even of foolishness and madness. And I find, okay, y'all, hold on to your seats. You guys in this room may know. Anybody listening, hold on to your seats. I'm going to explain. And I find more bitter than death the woman whose heart is snares and nets, whose hands are fetters, and he who pleases God shall escape from her, but the sinner shall be trapped by her. Hold on, I'm not done. Here is what I have found, says the preacher, adding one thing to the other and find out the reason, which my soul still seeks, but I cannot find. One man among 1,000 I have found, but a woman among all these I have not found. So, okay, I'm about to explain.
I'm holding.
She's holding on.
You haven't heard the explanation of this?
It's okay. Sometimes it takes repetition. Okay, the Bible is a deep, long book. It takes repetition of these things. All right. That's
right. The one that doesn't have the heart, right? Just listen. Okay.
Okay. One man among 1,000 I haven't found, but a woman among all these I have not found. This is one of the verses that I had questions about that nobody could give me an answer for when I was a young Christian. And I was like, what do you really? So years later, as I'm doing my own study, I figure it out that if you remember, Solomon himself had 700 wives and 300 concubines, and so he had a total of 1,000 wives. And so he is speaking of his own 1,000 wives that he himself had chosen for his household because he was making political alliances. These were not romances, or maybe some of them were, but most of them were not. These were just princesses and daughters of kings and princes so that he could make political alliances. That's all it was. So in 1 Kings 19, we find, here's what it says. And he had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. For it was so when Solomon was old that his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not loyal to the Lord his God, and as was the heart of his father David. For Solomon went after Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord and did not fully follow the Lord as did his father David. Then Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, on the hill that is east of Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the people of Ammon. And he did likewise for all his foreign wives, who burned incense and sacrificed to their gods. Okay, so before I say the comment about that, is the fact that Solomon couldn't find one righteous woman among 1,000. But this is the reason why he couldn't find one righteous woman among 1,000, because there were his 1,000 that he chose. There were his 1,000 women. No.
Well,
that's my point. Neither was he. Okay.
Maybe the one out of 1,000 was his dad.
Yeah.
Of the men?
You know what? That's a good. You're right. That's a good point. His dad, David. So here's the footnote to that. Solomon did speak highly of women in other scriptures, even personifying wisdom as a woman in Proverbs. So it's not. It looks like you have to know the whole story. In other words, it looks like he is saying there's no righteous women, but that's not true.
Because he speaks well, like, of his mother,
Yes, yes, his
like it's obvious he's talking about his wives.
yeah,
Imagine being
he's
his
talking.
wives reading Ecclesiastes.
And by the time he gets to the end of his life, he's realizing this stuff in hindsight. You know what I'm saying? He's looking back at the end of his life and going, man, it's like out of all these women, yeah, I think he's kind of realizing some things towards the end. But that's heavy stuff when you've gone that far astray. Because they were, for those who may not know, sacrificing to these were demon gods that demanded child sacrifice. They would have been Solomon's kids because those were his wives. All right, where am I at? 29. Truly, this only I have found, that God made man upright, but they have sought out many schemes. He made man to be upright, but in the beginning, but they've sought out many schemes. Chapter 8. Who is like a wise man, and who knows the interpretation of a thing? A man's wisdom makes his face shine, and the sternness of his face is changed. I say, keep the king's commandment for the sake of your oath to God. Do not be hasty to go from his presence. Do not take your stand for an evil thing, for he does whatever pleases him. All right, so Solomon, here's the comment. Solomon is saying he's describing an officer in a royal court who had to carry out the orders of a king with total authority. What happens when the king commands him to do something evil? That's kind of the question. His admonition is to keep the king's commandment, recognizing that all authority comes from God. And the choices here are disobedience, desertion, defiance, or discernment. So there are times, and I'm about to expand on this a little bit. So he's basically saying, in general terms, it's better to keep the king's word because he's got all the power and authority to do whatever he wants to with you. And ultimately, his authority comes from God. There is the line that Jesus says to Pilate when he says, you would have no authority over me unless it was given you from heaven.
And Nebuchadnezzar was like, unless you admit it that I've given this to you, you're going to lose your mind.
Jesus yes.
Don't die on the cross no more.
No, he's alive forever now.
Yeah.
She's so cute.
She thinks he's going to have to keep dying.
Oh, bless her.
She's
yeah.
around about things.
Yeah. One of the cool things one thing that I have always been amazed by in these stories in the Old Testament is, well, in the New Testament too, is how these men handled, and some women, how they handled politically with diplomacy being in front of rulers, and how they navigated in general, because most of them, because you see Daniel working under Nebuchadnezzar, right under Nebuchadnezzar, Joseph right under Pharaoh, and they had to be wise and discerning in how they handled that. Because, so there's up to a point. Like, the admonition is, do what the king says and respect him, and respect it as authority coming from God, until it would require you to disobey God's commandment to do so. We see examples of that also. But in general, Daniel was really good at this. To me it's so interesting to see how he spoke to Nebuchadnezzar, and he generally would say, O king, live forever, and may the interpretation of this thing be for your enemies and not for
if
you.
it wasn't for, he's like, I wish it was for your enemies and not you.
I wish this was for your enemies and not you. And how they had the utmost respect and humility and how they approached them and wisdom and it's really interesting to me. I think there's a whole lot to learn from that. So here's let's go down because I have a couple of examples. Verse 4 says, where the word of a king is, there is power. And who may say to him, what are you doing? He who keeps his command will experience nothing harmful, and a wise man's heart discerns both time and judgment. Because for every matter there is a time and judgment, though the misery of man increases greatly. So here's the comment. Some things require the right timing and procedure. An example would be how Joseph handled his brothers, testing to find out their heart. It was only after they confessed their sin to him that he revealed himself to them. It's such an interesting study that I won't elaborate on, to see how Joseph was an archetype of Christ and how he tested them, and it was only how they confessed their sin and then he reveals himself to them. It's really a cool scene. But also, here's another example. Nehemiah, we were just talking about this with Ezra, same time period. Nehemiah wanted to return to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple and the city, but he waited for the right moment to make his request to the king. So Nehemiah was a servant of the king, and he didn't just rush in to ask the king to return. He waited for the right timing. And then here's another example. Daniel and his friends navigated the situation. This is a good example. They navigated the situation of not eating unclean food in the Babylonian captivity with wisdom and discernment, not by overreacting or grandstanding. So let me try to explain this. And it's so funny how people do like the Daniel diet, and I'm like, people don't understand the story if they
right.
if they think that this is supposed to be like
not weight loss, dude.
It's not. Yeah, it's not. The reason that they refused the meat and the richer foods is because it had been, at that time, all of it had been sacrificed to idols, and they knew it was dedicated and sacrificed to idols. That's why, and a lot of it was unclean for other reasons. It wasn't kosher. That's why they refused the food. But they had to navigate this whole scenario very carefully, because the guards that were in charge of them, their job was to present strong, young, bright. They were supposed to present them at their peak performance to the king. That was their job. And so they're like, we can't have you just eating grains and beans. That ain't going to fly. You got to, it's like, it's my job, because you understand, the guards, it was their heads that were going to roll if they didn't do this right. I mean, it was that serious. So that's why Daniel and his friends, they said, well, look, test us. Let's just give it a test run and see if we're not stronger and brighter than everybody else. So the whole point of that is that the fact that they were presented stronger and brighter, it was like a miraculous event that the Lord sustained them that way. It's not, the Daniel diet is not something that's supposed to by nature make you fit and healthy. Anyway, but that was the point of it, and the way they navigated it. I mean, there's a lot of wisdom to be found in the way they handled those kind of situations. But then again, you see Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego in front of the golden statue, refusing to bow down there. So there is a moment where the disobedience is the correct thing to do. But generally speaking, in general terms, we have to recognize that even evil authority.
I thought that about lying too.
About what?
Lying.
Lying?
Like when Rahab lied to.
When Rahab lied.
Like there's certain times where, like,
even lying.
It's permissive. Like you're not.
Yes. It was counted to her as righteousness
Yeah.
to lie and
do
hide
that,
and
yeah.
hide them. Yep, you're right.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting,
Gotta have
but
wisdom about it.
to have wisdom and discernment. So I put in here, not by overreacting and grandstanding. So when Daniel and his friends, when they were like, when they were presented with food that had been, offered to demons, they didn't say, I'm not gonna, it's like, get that crap out of here. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna be a blah 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 blah. They didn't insult them or berate them. They didn't make it a big scene. They operated with wisdom and humility and said, hey, it's like, we can't eat this, but I promise, if you, let's test it out and you'll see. And so that's where the discernment comes in. It's like, yes, there's a time for disobedience, but there's a way to do it. There's a way to do it. All right, verse 7. For he does not know what will happen, so who can tell him when it will occur? No one has power over the spirit to retain the spirit. No one has power over their own spirit to not, like, when it's your time to die, it's your time, basically. And no one has power in the day of death. There is no release from that war. So interesting how he words it. And wickedness will not deliver those who are given to it. Addictions, basically. If you're given over to wickedness, it will not deliver you. It's going to enslave you. So here's the comment. A day is coming when wickedness will be judged, and even kings will not escape. So what about civil disobedience? We were kind of going over that just now. Civil disobedience. Acts chapter 5, verse 29. But Peter and the other apostles answered and said, we ought to obey God rather than men. So there's the New Testament examples of they were constantly told and commanded not to preach the gospel. But what'd they do? They went out and did it anyway. But there were times that they did leave the city. I mean, there were times they were put in jail. There were times they were eventually martyred, for it. But every step along the way, they had to listen to the leading of the Spirit to know how to handle every single situation along the way. And there is no formula, like we were saying. There's no formula. You have to rely on the Holy Spirit. Verse 9, huh? Oh. All this I have seen and applied my heart to every work that is done under the sun. There is a time in which one man rules over another to his own hurt. Then I saw the wicked buried, who had come and gone from the place of holiness, and they were forgotten in the city where they had so done. This is also vanity. So what he's saying then is that he was apparently reporting on a funeral he had attended of a man who had frequented the temple and received praise from the people, but he hadn't lived a godly life. Yet he'd been given a magnificent funeral while the truly godly people of the city had been forgotten. So he's basically acknowledging that this is a big miscarriage of justice, that it happened that way, but justice is met out in the end. So yeah, the same place where during this man's life, he saw him going back and forth to the temple all the time, but all the while his life is not lining up. Verse 11, because the sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore the heart of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil. That's a throwback from, I think, either Deuteronomy or Leviticus 1, about carrying out, it's like punishment should come down swiftly, or else people are just going to keep on doing the thing. And that's very true. Though a sinner does evil 100 times and his days are prolonged, yet I surely know that it will be well with those who fear God and who fear before him. But it will not be well with the wicked, nor will he prolong his days, which are as a shadow, because he does not fear before God. There is a vanity which occurs on earth, There are just men to whom it happens according to the work of the wicked. And again, there are wicked men to whom it happens according to the work of the righteous. And I said that this also is vanity. So basically saying the wicked get what the righteous deserve, and the righteous get what the wicked deserve, and this makes no sense, you know. So there's a Spanish proverb that says, laws like the spider's web catch a fly and let the hawks go free. I thought that was pretty good. It's really true.
That is a good one.
Because us little flies we're going to get caught, but the hawks, they're not ever going to spend a day in jail. Until Jesus sets up his kingdom, there will be injustices, is basically what that's saying. All right, verse 15. So I commended enjoyment, because a man has nothing better under the sun than to eat, drink, and be merry. For this will remain with him in his labor all the days of his life, which God gives him under the sun. When I applied my heart to know wisdom and to see the business that is done on earth, even though one sees no sleep day or night, then I saw the work of God, that a man cannot, bless you, cannot find out the work that is done under the sun. There's no formula. For though a man labors to discover it, yet he will not find it. Moreover, though a wise man attempts to know it, he will not be able to find it. Even a wise man will not be able to find it. Yeah. So, next week, for those of you who enjoy a little conspiracy theory now and then, next week is going to be Conspiracy Theory Sunday in Ecclesiastes. What? Don't look shocked. What? Oh, no. Oh, you'll see. You'll see.
Now I have to prep.
Conspiracy Theory Sunday. Read ahead. I challenge you to read ahead and see. Just read ahead a few verses from here and see if anybody can figure.
All one chapter?
That was chapter 7 and 8. Next week we're going to do chapters 9 and 10. Chapters 9 and 10.
So there's 2 more weeks of this.
2 more weeks.
Of Ecclesiastes.
Yes, of Ecclesiastes. But next week I'm going to just take the opportunity to do a little bit of a deep dive in something, because I just can't help myself. And I just can't help myself.
You never can.
I know. But so everybody say a prayer for me, okay? It's all vanity. It's meaningless. But yeah, the next 2 or 3 days are going to be a little rough on me still because things. But I have good family and friends who are going to help us get through it. So hopefully I'll be able to do it justice. I think I'll be able to do it justice. But I'm not going to get a whole lot of sleep, I don't think, for the next couple of days. It's going to be a whole lot of work and a whole lot of running and crap and not a lot of sleep. But, it won't be the first time in my life I've done it. So, just everybody say a prayer for me. And I know it's y'all don't even worry about it. It's, it ain't nothing unless that big of a huge deal. It's just one of those weeks when several things piled up in the same. Why not make it all happen in the same week? And then for the very last final cherry on top, let's have the bathroom explode, because that's fun. You might as well do it all at the same time. Here we go. Till next week, come back and join us for Conspiracy Theory Sunday. Love, love, love.